The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique users, on demand on iTunes, on demand on YouTube, and on demand on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Well, we've been discussing the economic meltdown, and when we do, most of the focus has been on the United States, but entire countries in Europe are in danger of economic collapse. Danny Schechter, the news dissector, author of Plunder, investigating our economic calamity and the subprime scandal, has just returned from Europe, where he has taken a close look at the financial situation there as well. He joins us now on News Talk Online on Paltalk.com. Danny, welcome back to the show.
Hey, pleasure to be with you. Obviously, you know, this is a rapidly changing situation. I mean, we've never had, you know, a crisis that's now touched so many people all over the world. You know, estimated 51 million people facing unemployment worldwide. The World Bank basically dire forecasts for emerging countries and poorer countries, particularly where people, you know, don't have a lot to begin with and will have a lot less as the crisis you know, hits them, and hits them much harder than it's hitting us. And of course, other countries like the United Kingdom, Great Britain, you know, actually may be in worse shape financially than we are, with more people unable to live for 30 days without a paycheck. You know, in other words, desperation row and desolation row seem to be around the corner. In fact, the British government has now put the, you know, its army on notice that they are expecting a summer of rage, of protests, and that's beginning to, you know, happen already, with activists there talking about, you know, what's the best way to get heat during the crisis? Burn a banker. I mean, they're saying that metaphorically, but the possibilities of violence can't be ruled out. We've seen, you know, ugly protests in Greece and in the Baltic states, in Eastern Europe, in Iceland as well, where the basic economy has collapsed. So, you know, every action has a reaction, as you know. It's the law of gravity, I guess. Is that what it is? Or Newtonian physics or something like that. And so, you know, the idea that the rest of us are just going to sit around and be spectators to these issues, as our 501, you know, K lose value, as our homes lose value, as we lose our jobs, as companies collapse. The idea that people are just going to sit around fiddling while Rome burns is not really a likely forecast. In fact, none other than Zbigniew Brzezinski was on C-SPAN recently. I can't get my initials straight here. Basically warning, you know, of possible riots in America. So, you know, this is a very volatile situation. It's not just some abstract financial, you know, mush to talk about, because a financial crisis, what started as a credit crisis, became a financial crisis, became an economic crisis, and is now a social crisis. And as that moves deeper into the population, as people realize that they've lost a lot of money and they've lost a lot their futures in some instances, there's likely to be hell to pay. And, you know, it's scary in that respect.
Hand in glove with your reporting of this economic situation is the fact that you are the news dissector, and you have been very critical, especially here in the United States, of the way this issue and others have been covered. Interestingly, the Jon Stewart versus Kramer fight it's kind of funny the way Comedy Central presents it, the Daily Show on Comedy Central, but it would be funny if it weren't so true that the very people who we have entrusted to report on this to us have gotten it wrong all along the way. So why is that so, and has that changed, and why are we so narrowly nationalistic, Danny?
Last week I was outside the federal courthouse in New York, and when Bernie Madoff was meeting the judge and basically, essentially pleading guilty to the charges against him and moving from the penthouse to the jailhouse. And there was a guy from Fox News there. All the journalists were lined up, outside the courthouse, breaking news, very melodramatically reporting on all of this. Of course, none of them had actually reported on the Bernie Madoff scam when it was actually taking place. There was very little reporting on corporate crime, corporate fraud, and the rest. Now, it's like he's the poster boy, of evil. And in fact, there were pictures of him looking like the Joker in Batman, as the bad man. And it felt like it was a good day for a lynching in New York with all these reporters there. And I told the guy from Fox News, he said, "Danny, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing a documentary about the media." And he says, "Yeah." He said, "That'll be a short documentary," because clearly he knew, and so many others did, that, this has not been a story at the very top, of the priorities of most of our media system. In fact, I've written a book called Plunder, Investigating Our Economic Calamity, from Cosimo Books, basically talking about the role of the media specifically, and how between 2002 and 2007, when the market melted down, there were almost no stories warning us about the subprime dangers, that this housing bubble could collapse. There was very little looking at the economy. Everybody was making money, it seemed, and everybody was happy, and nobody was looking too critically. And in the same period, something like $3 billion in advertising from dodgy lenders and credit card companies was going into TV stations, radio stations, and websites, big websites. So, when you have that much penetration by one industry in the media, it's not surprising that the media doesn't look too critically at the companies that are advertising with them, because they need the money, et cetera, so they justify it. So, there's been a media failure alongside a financial failure and regulatory failure, that this is a sort of a trifecta of disaster, and it's been a sort of slow motion crisis. It starts off, down on Wall Street. Most people who don't know much about Wall Street, don't think it affects them. It's just rich people losing money and all the rest of it. And slowly, it rolls out through the whole society until we have, maybe 13 million unemployed and, 10 million homes in foreclosure and, bankruptcies at a record level and banks insolvent and all the rest of it. And all of it is beginning to impact on all of us, but it's taken a while, and because of that, suddenly the story sort of exploded. Today you have the New York Post with a headline here in New York about the dirty, greedy bastards, okay? As if the New York Post